Ryan's grip tightened around the little box in his hand, the gift he had just bought, his thoughts still tangled in memories of his mother. But everything inside him stopped when his gaze fell on the girl crouched low, a thin arm stretched out, her hand shaking as strangers passed her by. His first instinct was to keep walking, to bury the familiar ache of pity he could never fix. Yet something held him still. Something pierced through him like lightning. He turned his head slowly, his eyes narrowing, his chest burning with a sudden, wild pounding. He saw the angle of her jaw beneath the tangled curtain of hair, the curve of her lips, the scar he once kissed so many years ago. His world tilted. His throat closed. No, it wasn't possible. But the name escaped him, soft and trembling, torn from a place deeper than breath itself. Melissa. The sound of it shattered the air between them. She looked up, her hollow eyes meeting his, and in an instant the years collapsed. A gasp broke from her lips, her fingers dropped the little tin can she had been clutching, and the clatter on the pavement echoed like a cruel bell. Ryan's stomach twisted. His chest heaved. He couldn't move, yet his body trembled as though struck by a storm. 12 years of silence surged back in a flood. 12 years of bitterness, of endless questions with no answers. 12 years of hating her for vanishing without a word, for tearing him apart and leaving him to rot in the ruins of their promises. And now here she was, not a ghost, not a memory, but flesh and bone, ragged and broken before his eyes. His jaw clenched, his knuckles white around the box he carried. Shock clawed at him, disbelief burned in his veins, and beneath it all a raw anger rose like fire, fighting with the ache of seeing the only girl he ever loved brought so low. Every heartbeat screamed, every breath felt like betrayal all over again. It was her. Melissa. The girl who had once been his whole world, and the girl who destroyed it. His chest heaved as her eyes met his, and in that instant the years folded back on themselves, dragging him into the place he had fought so long to bury. He saw her again as she once was, bright laughter spilling across the gym floor during the school dance, her hand locked in his as if she would never let go. He felt the weight of the promise ring he had slipped onto her finger behind the chapel, her whispered vow that nothing could separate them. He had believed her then, with the blind faith of a boy who thought love was indestructible. But the memory darkened as fast as it had come. He saw the day she vanished, the silence that followed like a knife pressed against his ribs. No call. No note. Just absence that screamed louder than any goodbye. His friends had told him she ran off with someone else, and though he never wanted to believe it, the betrayal settled in his bones until it hardened into rage. He had carried that wound for 12 years, heavy as iron, sharp as glass. And now here she stood, thin, hollow, stripped of every trace of the girl he once knew. Broken, silent, staring back at him as if she was the one who had been haunted. His body trembled under the weight of everything he had lost, everything she had taken when she left. His voice cracked as the words slipped out again, more wounded than angry this time, more disbelief than fury. Melissa. The name hung between them, fragile and jagged, like the echo of a life stolen long ago. Her lips trembled, and for a moment Ryan thought she would turn away, vanish into silence again. But then her voice came, low and cracked, words heavy with years of weight she could no longer carry. In many ways, she whispered, her hands shaking, I did die. The sound of it broke through him like a strike of lightning. He froze, his anger tangled with confusion, the bitterness of 12 years colliding with something softer, something he didn't want to name. Her eyes filled as she forced herself to go on. Do you remember Joey? Ryan blinked, stunned. Your brother. Her breath hitched. 12 years ago, a car hit him. I was babysitting that night. My mom had gone to work. I turned away for 1 second, just one, and, her voice cracked, the confession pouring out like a wound ripped open. I couldn't live with myself. I blamed myself every single day. I still do. Ryan's stomach knotted, the air ripped from his lungs. He stared at her, this girl he had made into his villain, the one he had hated for abandoning him. And here she was, shaking, drowning in guilt that had been eating her alive while he built his hate around a lie he never knew. She wiped at her face, tears slipping through her fingers. I didn't betray you, Ryan. I didn't stop loving you. I just broke. I couldn't come back. Not after that. Not when I didn't deserve love. Her words sank into him like stones, dragging his heart under. Rage still burned in his veins, screaming for all the years she stole from him. But sorrow cut through it, sharp and unrelenting, until he could no longer tell which feeling was stronger, anger for what she had done, or compassion for what she had carried alone. 12 years of hate collapse in seconds, but is truth enough to erase betrayal? Ryan's fists had been clenched so long his knuckles ached, but suddenly the fight inside him loosened. His breath came uneven, his chest rising and falling as he stared at the girl who had haunted him for half his life. For 12 years he had imagined this moment filled with fury, with questions and curses he would spit into her face. But none of those words came. Instead, his hand, trembling, uncertain, lifted toward her. She flinched at first, her body recoiling as though she expected him to strike, not touch. But he didn't stop. His fingers brushed hers, fragile and cold, and then he wrapped his hand around hers with a firmness that startled them both. Her eyes widened, tears balancing on the edge, stunned by the very thing she thought she had lost forever. He swallowed hard, his voice breaking as he whispered, "Helping you. Just like you once helped me believe in love." Her lips parted, but no sound escaped. She shook her head, disbelief cutting through her shock. She searched his eyes as though trying to find anger hidden there, trying to make sense of kindness that made no sense at all. For a long, aching moment neither of them spoke. Only the press of his hand against hers, steady, refusing to let go. And then Ryan made the choice that would change everything. His grip tightened gently, and he pulled her to her feet. "You're coming with me," he said softly, not as a request, but as a decision already sealed in his heart. He would not leave her to crumble on the pavement. Not again. Not after everything. Without another word, Ryan led her away from the cold streets, carrying both the weight of the past and the fragile spark of something he thought had died long ago. She sat across from him in the small booth, her shoulders hunched, her hands trembling around the spoon as though it weighed more than she could bear. Every movement was slow, careful, almost painful to watch. She lifted the bowl of soup in tiny sips, her eyes lowered, her face shadowed with shame. Ryan said nothing at first. He only watched, his chest tight, his heart warring with the thousand things he wanted to say and the silence that seemed safer. Finally, her voice broke the stillness, thin and brittle. "All these years. I've been nowhere. Everywhere. Shelters, bus stations, abandoned corners. I cleaned houses for a while, until I got sick. Fell behind. Lost everything." She let out a bitter laugh that cut sharp against the quiet. "Survival isn't living. It's hiding in shadows, waiting for the next day to crush you." Ryan's throat tightened. He wanted to reach across the table, to hold her hand again, but he kept still, letting her speak. She stirred the soup with shaking fingers, and her voice dropped lower. "I couldn't go back to anyone. Pride is cruel. Shame is worse." Her lips trembled as she whispered, "I was 16 when it happened. 16, Ryan. I should have protected him. I should have saved Joey. Instead, Her words dissolved into silence. The ache in Ryan's chest grew unbearable. He leaned forward, his voice rough but steady. "You were 16, Mel. 16. It was an accident. You didn't kill him." At the sound of that name, Mel, her spoon slipped, clattering into the bowl. She pressed her hands to her face, sobs tearing through her thin frame. "No one's called me that in over a decade." Ryan's eyes burned as he watched her break, the girl he had loved collapsing into pieces across the table. He didn't move, didn't push, only let the weight of his words and the truth he needed her to hear sink into the space between them. She was still Melissa. She was still Mel. And no matter how far she had fallen, part of her was still the girl he had never stopped carrying in his heart. Ryan reached into his coat pocket, his fingers brushing against the familiar edge of the small card he had carried for months. He placed it gently on the table between them, sliding it forward until it rested by her trembling hand. She looked at it as though it were a trap, her eyes darting from the card to his face, confusion and fear colliding inside her. "It's an extra room," he said quietly, his voice steady, though his chest thundered. "Stay there until you're ready. No questions. No judgment." Her hand hovered above the card but pulled back sharply. She shook her head, her breath quick and uneven. "I can't accept. Not from you. Not after everything. Ryan. I don't deserve it." His jaw tightened, his heart twisting at the way she recoiled not from him but from the thought of being cared for. He leaned closer, his eyes locking onto hers with a weight that left no space for escape. "Yes, you can. Because I think God made me turn that corner for a reason today." The words hung in the air, steady and unshaken, as if even he couldn't believe the strength behind them. She swallowed hard, her lips parting in disbelief, her eyes shining with tears she tried to hold back. "Why?" she whispered, almost pleading. "Why are you doing this after all the ways I hurt you? After the years you spent hating me?" Ryan's throat burned. He let the silence stretch, let her see the truth flicker raw in his eyes. When he finally spoke, his voice broke, carrying both pain and a love buried too long. "Because I never stopped loving you. I just buried it under pain." Her breath caught, the card trembling between her fingers now, as though it might vanish if she let go. And in that moment, Ryan knew the choice he made would either heal everything they had lost, or destroy what little of him was left. Is love reborn, or is Ryan about to risk his heart all over again? The weeks slipped by in a fragile rhythm, each day carving out a space she had long forgotten how to live in. In Ryan's home, Melissa found what her body and heart had been starved of: rest, warmth, the steady assurance that she no longer had to fight for every breath alone. At first she moved like a shadow, cautious, unsure if she belonged, but little by little the edges of her fear began to soften. Therapy appointments became part of her routine, Ryan quietly driving her there, waiting outside without question. She returned each time with red eyes and a trembling frame, yet her steps grew a touch steadier, her voice a little stronger. Meals were no longer hurried scraps of survival but slow, deliberate moments where Ryan watched her rediscover what it meant to be nourished. The shame that once weighed her shoulders began to loosen its grip, piece by fragile piece. Some nights, though, the past returned like a storm, and she wept into her pillow until sleep carried her away. Other nights, Ryan sat beside her on the porch, the sky stretched wide above them. They spoke softly, sometimes of old memories, sometimes of the years between them, and sometimes of nothing at all. Her laughter, faint and uncertain, returned in flickers, catching him off guard every time it escaped her lips. And then there were the silences. The kind that weren't heavy or awkward but full, alive, louder than any words they could have spoken. In those pauses, sitting side by side with only the quiet hum of their breaths, Ryan felt something stirring he hadn't dared to feel in years. And Melissa, leaning just close enough to sense his presence, began to trust that maybe, just maybe, he would not let go this time. One evening the air between them grew heavy, not with silence this time, but with a question Melissa could no longer keep buried. Her hands twisted nervously in her lap, her eyes flickering toward Ryan and then away again, as though afraid of the answer before she even asked it. Finally, her voice broke through, soft but trembling. Do you really still love me?" The word struck him harder than he expected. He felt his chest tighten, his throat dry, as years of unspoken longing pressed against his ribs. He could have lied, could have deflected, but the truth had lived inside him too long to be denied. His voice came low, steady, but rough with emotion. I never got closure. Maybe I never wanted it. My heart held on, even when I told myself it shouldn't. Her eyes filled, and she shook her head slowly, disbelief and pain etched into every line of her face. I don't know if I deserve this. After what I did, after the years I took from you. How could I ever deserve your love again? Ryan leaned closer, his gaze holding hers, unflinching. His hand brushed lightly against hers, not forcing, just steady, a quiet anchor in the storm of her doubt. His lips curved in a faint, almost broken smile, and his words carried the weight of everything he had come to believe. Then let's not call it a second chance. Let's call it grace. The words hung between them, fragile yet unshakable, and in that moment Melissa's breath caught, as though something inside her cracked open. She didn't answer, not with words, but the tears that slid down her cheeks told him she had heard, and that, for the first time in years, she believed it. Days stretched into weeks, and the rhythm of their lives wove itself into something quiet but steady. There were no sweeping declarations, no dramatic gestures to erase the years behind them. Instead, their bond grew in small, almost invisible ways: shared cups of coffee in the morning, the gentle sound of Melissa's laughter slipping back into the world, the way Ryan's shoulders seemed lighter when she was near. The wounds they carried didn't vanish, they lingered like shadows. Some mornings she woke with tears she couldn't explain, and some nights Ryan stared into the dark, haunted by all the time they had lost. But in the spaces between, something tender began to take shape. They didn't need promises, they needed presence. And in that presence, they learned to breathe again. Melissa no longer moved like a stranger in his house. She leaned into the small comforts, folding laundry with quiet determination, sitting across the table without fear in her eyes, letting her voice steady when she spoke his name. Ryan watched her with a patience born of years of pain, knowing every step she took back toward herself was fragile and precious. And still, beneath it all, something unspoken lingered. A pause heavy enough to feel, a truth waiting for the courage to surface. They had opened the door to forgiveness, but both knew that stepping fully through it meant risk, meant placing hearts already scarred into each other's hands once more. Forgiveness has opened a door, but stepping through it might cost them both everything. The night wrapped itself around them as they sat side by side, their hands clasped together, fingers trembling against one another. Neither spoke. The silence wasn't empty, it pulsed with everything left unsaid, everything too heavy to give shape to yet. Ryan felt the faint squeeze of her hand in his, fragile but real, and in that small touch was both a promise and a question. Melissa's gaze stayed lowered, her breaths uneven, as though the weight of trusting again pressed on her chest with every inhale. Ryan watched her quietly, torn between the relief of having her here and the fear that one wrong step could shatter everything they had rebuilt. A flicker of hope glimmered between them, soft and uncertain, but no future felt secure, not yet. Their story had returned to life, pulled back from the ashes of grief and guilt, but where it went next neither of them knew. The past lingered like a shadow just out of sight, its presence reminding them how easily it could all come crashing down again. Their hearts beat together in that silence, steady, searching, vulnerable. But beneath every thrum was the question neither dared to speak aloud. Will love heal them, or break them all over again? You tell me the answer of this question and I will see who is smart.